I was thinking about the theme, people who do, and I asked a friend of mine, what is the opposite of doing? What is its nemesis? And he believes it's people who think. And he probably is right. The world is divided to people who think and people who do. And I think it's probably our fault, even as Greeks, for the invention of philosophy and having that dichotomy between the intellectual realm and that of the praxis, of elevating thought to something of a superior status, whereas doing remained for those who are common. But it got me thinking, what does it mean for the creative mind? How does that application of thinking and doing get into play when we're talking about somebody creative? Because a creative, an artist or a designer, puts their work out there so that they can evoke emotion, they can create a reaction, and they can provoke criticism. So they have to do something first for that to happen. And I thought to myself, art used to be the ultimate expression of that manual craft, yet now it's so much about thinking. And it's so much so that Jeff Koons is notoriously known for not even wanting to touch his art. Imagine saying that 100 years ago or more, or centuries ago, to Phidias. Imagine telling people that the most brilliant sculptor of our times didn't even touch his sculpture. It's absurd, right? But there is that dichotomy that's happening now, and I got interested in that because I feel many people do suggest that you need to do the thinking first, and that should inform the doing. And I certainly was one of those people. But how can you be a designer in doing so? I was one of those students in high school who wanted to achieve the mark and tick a learning outcome, and I was so in fear of failure, without really knowing the reason. I mean, what did I have to fear? I was 17 years old, I'd never had failed anything, but I had that fear, and I think it was this idea of abstract perfectionism and this idea that inhibited any action, because if I did fail at such an early stage, that would ruin me for my entire career, so I couldn't even put any of my ideas into action. And I started in that way, and I remember there was a time that something shifted. I was trying to see if I'm good enough to be a creative and if that's what I wanted to pursue. And I sat down with one of my tutors who told me, you'll never know, Mary, if you're good enough if you don't go out and try. And you'll never know the distance that you need to travel to find your glass ceiling, even break that ceiling, if you never give 100%. And I remember at that stage, it kind of hit a chord, and I set benchmarks for myself from that point on to get the affirmation that I needed, and that stamp of approval that could allow me to take my work to the next level, and then the next level. So I was one of those people who did a lot of learning, but not a lot of trying, and a lot of thinking, but not enough doing. And I decided to make a change. So I decided to apply to Rhode Island School of Design. And why I applied there is because there was this notion that it's an extremely difficult college to get in to do design. So it was a little bit more about myself and proving to myself that I am of that caliber. So I did apply, and I did get in, and which came as a huge surprise anyway. And it was the first year that I left Greece and started living abroad. And there was a little bit more trying, but there was, again, a lot of thinking and a lot of learning. And I think it was mostly because of the educational system and how that was built. And at that time, I also met my boyfriend, who was going to go to London to do his MSc. And I remember I thought, I need to kind of follow him to London, and I really wanted always to go to St. Martin's, because I had heard about all these brilliant designers coming out, and I felt that was an environment that really pushes you to do. And I was ready to be a doer. I was not anymore in that kind of frozen state and that abstract perfectionism. I wanted to try myself. So I went to St. Martin's. I transferred into the second year, and I felt like I was at the bottom of the pack. I had no self-belief. I was in awe of everyone around me but myself, and I felt I had a lot to prove. And I did what I felt most comfortable in doing, which was interior design. So I did everything from rugs to carpets to wallpapers, anything that seemed a natural transition from the architecture I was doing to textile design, which is what I had transferred into. But I had to look around, and everyone was doing something that seemed to me a lot cooler, and that was bringing a 3-dimension to their work. And that 3-dimension was that of the female figure. I felt it would be so much more interesting to look at precision engineering, something that wasn't happening with print at that time, and change my work. But I hit a brick wall, and that brick wall that I hit was my technical ability. I didn't have the technical ability to materialize all these ideas that I had in my mind. And I had to self-teach myself Photoshop. Back then, it was all about screen printing. Digital printing was such a taboo. You couldn't really have any CAD classes. So I had to self-teach myself Photoshop and then convince everyone around me that that is the medium that I need to create for the first time something tangible. And I kind of did. I self-taught myself Photoshop. I decided my final project for my BA will be a fashion collection, and everyone was so surprised because I was so comfortable in interiors that no one understood why I was doing that shift. But in my mind, I was challenging myself to do something that can define me as a designer. So I went to John Lewis, I got a bunch of patterns, I tried to understand them, I tried to get my head around what I need to be doing. I couldn't get it, I was trying to engineer the print. Anyway, in the end, I did create a collection, which definitely wasn't the peak of my career, but it was certainly the first tangible idea of what my work can look like if I add that layer, which was working with prints for fashion. And it came that time to me which was the time for a second benchmark. I had done my BA, I had tried to do something, I certainly had learned technically how to do that, but I needed some kind of confirmation that I am good enough, because again, I was not good enough in my mind. So I wanted to apply to the Royal College of Art. Again, I had kind of this ghost in my head that the Royal College of Art is the best university that you can go to for design, and it's something that can challenge me intellectually as well as creatively. I even remember going around the building and showing it to my friend or my boyfriend and saying, do you think I will ever be in there? Do you think I will be one of its students? And I really, really wanted to go. So I applied, and I didn't get in. And that was a little bit of a reality check, because I thought I had done something, and I had put all those ideas that I had into something tangible. But what I hadn't done is I hadn't allowed that to kind of influence a thread of thought that would then allow me to evolve into something that can be more definitive and more my signature. So I took a year out, I did an apprenticeship, and I reapplied. And I did get in. And I was really happy, over the moon. And then I became a little bit greedy, so I applied to Central St. Martin's as well, which was even more far-fetched, because I grew up looking at Galliano and McQueen and all these brilliant designers who all came out of St. Martin's. And I didn't grow up. My upbringing had nothing to do with fashion, so I never wanted to be there. It seemed like a completely different world. But for the first time, I saw myself that I kind of allowed myself to dream that I could get in. So I applied, and I did get in, which was a second shock. It was two multiple shocks. I didn't know what to do with myself. I was becoming a little bit more confident, but yet not confident at all. And I decided to go there because it would be a challenge, and I needed to prove to myself, if I pursued fashion, that I can do it in such a competitive industry. And also I wanted to be taught by Professor Louise Wilson, because she's such a harsh critic, so I felt she can really channel my creativity, and she can really filter through, and I can know for the first time if I'm good enough. So I go to St. Martin's, again, bottom of the pack, no self-belief, even worse than the BA. I kind of devoured every fashion magazine that I can find in front of me, because it was important to me to kind of catch up into 2 centuries of fashion I knew nothing about. Because here I was with people who wanted to be fashion designers since the age of 10, who had a fashion degree under their belt, and I went there with nothing, with a textiles degree and a fashion project that was probably one of the worst ones in that context. And that information allowed me to train my eye, and it allowed me to have a bit more strength in my convictions, and it allowed me to morph my aesthetic as well, because I feel that your aesthetic is kind of an elusive term, and it does get more from the environment you're in. And I had all this training that I had being brought up in Greece and my analytical thinking, and I could look at my work and think about and imagine what that could do. But I never had that educational system before that gives you no real guide, but also no real barrier, so you can be as creative as that. So I felt that, and I also felt another shift. I had become prolific, and it had nothing to do with having any more that train of thought that I need a perfectly executed plan, because that could never be applicable in design. What designer could have executed a perfectly planned idea with so many variables? You might as well not even try. So I saw myself being prolific, and I was churning out all this work because I wanted to show Louise and Fleet and all my tutors the work to see if they felt there's a spark there that could be remarkable. And I also saw myself for the first time questioning, why not me? I'm here, I'm doing all this, I'm putting myself against what's the closest, I guess, place into being in the industry. Why not me? Why can't I start my own business? Why can't I be a fashion designer? And I became obsessed with my third benchmark, which was getting into the MA show, which everyone is obsessed of getting into, but it was my third benchmark, so it was super important that I achieved that. So I did achieve that, and I got a place there. I opened the show, and I did a collection that was all about oversized jewellery that would be too heavy to wear if it were real, and I had this notion of creating something that's a little bit trompe-l'oeil, but in a new way that it hasn't been done before. And I got a lot of press and a lot of support. So I thought to myself, I've done it now, so that means I need to pursue it. So I called Sarah Mower, who is an ambassador of emerging talent in London and also an incredible fashion critic. And I thanked her for mentioning my work in her review, and I told her, I really want to try for it. I want to have my own fashion label. I'm going to go for it. And she said, you know, Mary, you need to be a little bit more serious about this. It's the worst time to open your own business. It's a recession. It's really dangerous to do that. But I knew that I didn't have the flexibility to think about it anymore. Now was the time that I had to do, and I had to go into it really naively. And I did. I applied for NEWGEN. I got the sponsorship. I got a studio in Hackney Wick. Probably it was 1/5 of this screen. We called it Fashion Jail because it had bars. And I was there, really committed with my 2 interns. No one spoke English. I had no pattern cutting skills whatsoever. 3 months later, we produced 8 dresses. That's all me and my 2 non-English speaking interns could achieve. But it showed an evolution for my work. And again, I didn't believe in myself. I thought I would never sell a dress. But I did. I went there, no order form in hand, no preparation, and a lot of the world's best boutiques were buying into that collection. And then reality kind of hit, that I was really getting into this. And I became everything. I became my own accountant, my own sales manager. I became the production manager. And I thought that there is no point in doing anything else apart from this. My knowledge of what was happening around me was probably sentence deep. My social life was out of the window. I was working 20 hours a day minimum. I mean, I still do. And it was such a struggle. I remember sleeping on the floor how do you call that, tied up in bubble wrap, to the point that people were coming in the morning, and I had to pop out the bubble wrap and take a really important meeting, which wasn't the best scenario to be in. And sometimes I was even delirious because I was so tired. I started speaking to people in Greek. And I find that really interesting, because when system failure is down, my hard drive was 100% Greek. My thinking, the way I was morphed was 100% Greek. But I was, for the first time, put in a context that I had that support, I had that platform to showcase my work and be competitive in an industry which is extremely demanding, that you have to do. You can't always think. You need to do, and then after you've done, allow that thought process to to help you evolve as a designer. And I think there's something really beautiful about that, because I opened myself to the unexpected. And there's something beautiful about putting your work out there in the world, because it creates a dialogue. You can be morphed by the perception that others have of you. And what's even more beautiful is that when you do something and you put it out in the world, people want to join you in that journey. People want to help you do. And me being able to have a team could help me achieve something far more significant than anything that I could achieve ever alone. And that's what I did. I decided that I wanted to shape print. It was about perception. It was about looking into design disciplines like perfumery and interiors and objects of art, and kind of being a guest designer into that discipline and subverting it in fashion. And what I was doing is I had to convince people at a time of minimalism and at a time that nothing decorative was there, that print can be more than a trend. Print can be a new way of wearing something that a woman wouldn't be able to wear before, and liberating them in that way. And I think I became no less insecure and no less fearful, but a lot more driven. And there's one collection that was very definitive, I feel, of that change, and that was the collection that I did on rooms. It was a collection based on interiors, and I had done the lineup, and I had created these lampshade skirts and these curtains to define print. And I looked at it for a while, and I realized, why not allow the theme of that collection to also define print? And, shape. It was defining print anyway. So shape as well. And that's when my work became one, and it became more about the shape and the print together. And I would have never reached that conclusion had I not had the technical ability that I had built, had I not had the team to help me achieve that, and had I not had the vision to create a thread of thought from the collection that came before it and before that. And that's what it meant to me to create a global brand. So Sarah Moore came to the studio before the collection, and she came and I was putting my lampshade skirts out, and I was really proud of them. And she left really silent, and I thought to her, and I said, Sarah, what do you think about the collection? And she told me, I'm just taking it all in, Mary. And I knew there was a bit of an issue, but I really believed in this idea. So I showed the collection, and after that, Sarah, I asked her, what did you think? And she said, the moment I entered in your studio, I thought, poor girl, her career is over. And I think that was the moment that I understood that I was becoming fearless, because that collection could have been a gimmick and could have reached, I guess, the wrong people and the wrong message, but it was commercially viable enough. And I had gone from selling to 15 stores to selling to 260 stores, and being able to show that to the world in a way that is digestible. And one more thing that collection did, I thought I had found a limit, and I thought that that limit is that I didn't have the approval of my own industry. I'd never won a competition, I'd never won an award, and I was given the opportunity to be a finalist at the Swiss Textiles Award. Now, this is an award that you can't really apply for. You get invited in once. If you win it, you win it. If you lose it, you lose it. So I go there, and I think, again, there's no way I'm going to win. They're talking to the other designers. No one is really talking to me. We're wasting our time, da-da-da-da. And I won. And I think that was the first time that I realized that I haven't reached my limit. That one limitation that I thought I had, I kind of surpassed. And then I realized that it's okay to be insecure and it's okay to be fearful, because you're using that as a drive to create something new. And you need to have that fear in order to push yourself and the boundaries of fashion and remain relevant. So, kind of to conclude, 2 weeks ago, I saw Louise Wilson, and my boyfriend, who's still the same guy, by the way, told her, Mary has achieved all these things, and she still doesn't believe in herself. And Louise said, of course she doesn't believe in herself. She's a creative, and being a creative means to be able to be inquisitive and doubt yourself and doubt everything around you, because what you're creating is going to shape function, it's going to shape aesthetic, and you need to be doubtful of that because it's not safe. And she sent me this quote, which is what I'm going to end on, which says, the greater the artist, the greater the doubt. Perfect confidence is given to those less talented as a consolation prize. And if I could urge anyone to do something, I would say just do, because sometimes having the conviction and getting that approval will just allow you to push yourself without ever finding that limit. Even if one idea materializes and gets to 85%, it's much better than doing nothing at all. And last thing, I promise, and then I'm off the stage. I think that it's really important to do something, because after all, if no one of us does anything, then nothing new will come to exist. And I really think that practice does make perfect. Thank you.